Millionaire shocked by who he sees at ex's grave, a girl with her face.
Welcome to my YouTube channel, Truth Untold Story. Which country are you watching this video from? If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell for more emotional stories every day. Grayson stood before the vast window of his high-rise penthouse, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass. Below him, the city pulsed with life. Cars rushing, people bustling, lights flickering like fireflies in the twilight haze. But inside, the silence was thick, unbroken. The space was immaculate, luxurious and cold, much like the life he had built around himself. A life full of accomplishments and accolades, yet devoid of warmth. All the millions in his bank account, the towering buildings bearing his name, and the applause of boardrooms could not silence the ache in his chest. That ache had a name: Lila Morgan. It had been 5 years since she died, 5 years since that tragic accident that tore her away from him and left a crater in his world. A hit and run, the kind of cruel randomness life sometimes throws at those least prepared. One moment she was alive, laughing, radiant, and the next, gone. Ethan had been broken ever since. He had never visited her grave. Not once. The funeral had been a blur, and after that, he had thrown himself into his work with relentless obsession, building an empire in an attempt to escape his grief. He told himself it was strength. In truth, it was fear. Fear that if he stood by her grave, he would shatter completely. But something had changed this morning. A strange stillness had greeted him when he opened his eyes, a whisper in the space between sleep and wakefulness. He couldn't explain it, only that he knew today, finally, he had to go. The decision wasn't dramatic or tearful, it was quiet, resolute. He rose, showered, dressed in a black overcoat, and stepped into the elevator like a man walking into a memory. On the way out, he stopped by a florist and picked up a bouquet of white lilies, Lila's favorite. She used to keep them by the window, their pale petals glowing in the morning light. "They're honest flowers," she had once said, simple and true. The drive to the cemetery was long and strangely empty. Clouds hung low in the sky, and the roads glistened as though the rain had just passed through. Ethan kept glancing at the passenger seat, at the bouquet resting there like a fragile promise. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. It had been so long. What if he couldn't handle it? What if he completely broke down? But still he kept driving. The cemetery was tucked away in the quiet part of town, shielded by old trees and wrought-iron fences. The gates creaked open slowly as he stepped through, the gravel crunching beneath his polished shoes. He hadn't been here since the funeral, and even then, he hadn't really been there. He had watched everything through a haze. Then, there it was. Her name carved into a smooth stone, simple and graceful, like she was. Lila Morgan. 1989-2020. Beneath it, in smaller letters, were the words, "Loved beyond words, missed beyond measure." Ethan stopped in his tracks, his breath caught. The flowers trembled slightly in his hand, though the wind was still. He stood there, unable to move for a long while. Then slowly, almost reverently, he stepped closer and knelt down. He laid the lilies on the soft grass in front of her headstone, brushing away a few stray leaves. His fingers hovered over the stone, not quite touching it. A long, aching silence stretched between him and the earth below. Finally he spoke, barely more than a whisper. "I should have come sooner." His voice cracked under the weight of the words. I thought I thought not coming here would protect me, that if I stayed away, it wouldn't be real." He paused, eyes misting over. But it was always real, wasn't it? He sat there, telling her things he should have said years ago. He told her about his success, how hollow it felt. He told her about the nights he woke up calling her name. He told her that despite everything, he still loved her, still missed her, still saw her in every sunrise. The pain didn't rush in like a flood. It seeped slowly, like warm water rising around his heart. But for the first time, he let it in. He leaned forward and rested his forehead gently against the stone. "You were my home," he whispered. "And I've been lost without you." The wind picked up slightly, soft and warm. For a second, it felt like her hand brushing against his cheek. He closed his eyes and allowed himself to imagine that she was there, just for a moment, with him. Finally, he stood, knees stiff, hands trembling. He looked down at the grave one last time. "I'll come back," he said. "I promise." As he turned to leave, something caught the corner of his eye. A figure standing quietly a few yards away, near the same row of graves. A young woman, barely in her 20s, wearing a faded blue dress. She wasn't moving. She was just watching. Ethan blinked, unsure if his eyes were playing tricks on him. But something about her face, something impossible, stopped him in his tracks. Ethan's breath hitched as his eyes locked onto the girl standing just a few paces away. She hadn't spoken, she hadn't moved, she was simply there, like a shadow from another time. Her presence didn't feel accidental, it felt anchored, as if the world had paused just long enough for this moment to unfold, exactly as it was meant to. The rain had begun again, soft and mist-like, clinging to...
Maybe not.
Ethan felt his pulse hammering in his ears. Something primal twisted in his chest, like grief rising to the surface in a different shape. He took a step forward, hesitant, as if she might disappear the moment he acknowledged her. Her features became clearer now, the soft curve of her jaw, the slope of her nose, the shape of her mouth. They were not similar to Lila's. They were identical. So much so, his knees nearly buckled. She tilted her head slightly, and her expression shifted, not fear, not surprise, just quiet curiosity. Her lips parted as though she was about to speak, but the words didn't come. Her gaze flicked from him to the headstone behind him, then back again. It was as though she were putting a puzzle together, and he was just another piece on the board. Ethan tried to say something, but his voice stuck in his throat. He took another slow step toward her, searching her face for anything that might offer a logical explanation. A resemblance, a coincidence, a trick of light or memory. But the closer he got, the less he believed any of those could explain what he was seeing. She finally broke the silence. Her voice was gentle, almost uncertain. "Are you here for her too?" He nodded. I knew her," he managed, his voice rough from emotion. "You could say I loved her more than anything." A pause. Her brow furrowed, and she took a breath. "I didn't know her, but I've come here before. I don't know why, really. I feel something when I'm here, like I'm supposed to be." Ethan's chest tightened. His hands trembled slightly. "What's your name?" She hesitated, as if the question was deeper than it seemed. "Mira," she said finally. "Mira Jensen. I was adopted, so I don't know what my birth name was. But Mira's the only one I've ever had." He nodded slowly, though his mind was spinning. The name meant nothing to him, but the face, it meant everything. She looked young, barely 20. Lila would have been in her 30s by now had she lived. But this girl, it was like time had folded in on itself and given him a glimpse into a world where Lila still existed. Mira tucked a strand of damp hair behind her ear and gave a small, nervous smile. Sorry, I don't mean to bother you. I didn't expect anyone else to be here. You're not bothering me, Ethan said quickly, almost too quickly. His eyes hadn't left her face. Do you come here often? Every few weeks, since I was 16. She looked down at her shoes, squishing slightly in the wet grass. It's strange. I don't even know this woman. I just feel drawn here. Silly, right? No, Ethan said quietly. Not silly at all. Another moment of silence passed between them. The rain began to fall a little harder now, dotting both of their shoulders and darkening the earth beneath their feet. But neither of them moved. The weather felt irrelevant, like the air between them was too charged to care about anything else. Ethan tried to shake the surreal feeling settling into his bones. Mira, has anyone ever told you that you look like her? She blinked. Who, Lila? He nodded slowly. She shrugged, clearly puzzled. I don't even know what she looked like until I saw the photo here, and yeah, I guess maybe there's a little resemblance. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. Ethan's breath caught again. He wasn't sure how much more of this strangeness he could take. His mind had always been logical, strategic. But nothing about this felt logical. This felt like fate. Or madness. Or both. Mira glanced back at him with a shy expression. Why are you looking at me like that? He swallowed hard. Because you remind me of someone I lost. Someone I thought I'd never see again. She didn't answer, just stood there in the rain, watching him with those two familiar eyes, and for a long, disorienting moment, Ethan felt as though the universe had opened a door he hadn't known existed. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the world had tilted slightly, bending time and logic around this impossible moment. The girl, Mira, stood there, still and unsure, like a memory come to life. And though the rain was falling now in a steady rhythm, neither of them made a move to leave. They were tethered to something deeper than the weather, tethered to the past. Who are you? Ethan asked, his voice catching in his throat. Mira's lips parted slightly, her eyes narrowing, not in offense, but in confusion. I told you, she said softly. I'm Mira. No, Ethan said, shaking his head slowly. I mean, who are you? Really? Her brows furrowed at his intensity. I don't know, she admitted. I've wondered that my whole life. The rain clung to her lashes, and she blinked it away with a quiet grace. They stood there, two strangers tangled in something neither of them understood. Finally, Ethan gestured toward a nearby bench beneath an old maple tree. The thick canopy offered some shelter from the rain, and Mira followed him without question. They sat in silence at first. The kind that didn't feel awkward, just heavy. The only sound was the soft patter of rain on leaves above. Mira fidgeted with her fingers, eyes occasionally flicking to Ethan, who hadn't taken his gaze off her since they met. You said you come here sometimes, he said eventually. She nodded. Since I was 16. I found this place by accident. Or maybe not by accident. I had this dream, over and over again, of I've been coming back ever since. Ethan listened, unmoving. Why 16? She exhaled, looking out across the gravestones. That's when I aged out of the last foster home. I never knew my birth parents. I was told I was left at a hospital as a baby. No note, no explanation, just left. Jensen is the name the system gave me. There's no trail. Every word made Ethan's world narrow. He felt like he was watching dominoes fall in slow motion, each one revealing something deeper. Lila had once confided in him, early in their relationship, about a brief period in her life that she never spoke of again. A secret. A pregnancy in her teens, before they met. She had said she'd lost the baby. Miscarriage, she claimed, but Ethan had always wondered. She never let him close to that part of her past. And now, here was Mira, sitting beside him, echoing Lila in her voice, her posture, even the way she held her sadness, quiet and dignified. There were too many coincidences to ignore. Her age, her face, her pull to this grave she shouldn't know. The timeline fit, the location, all of it. "Do you remember anything about your mother?" he asked carefully. Mira shook her head. "No, nothing. Just feelings. Sometimes I think I remember her scent or her laugh. But I could be making it up." Ethan's heart clenched. What kind of feelings? She looked down at her hands. Warmth, safety, but also a kind of sadness, like I was loved but not held on to. His throat tightened, 1,000 thoughts colliding. Could Lila have hidden a child from everyone? Given her up to protect her? From what? From whom? "I know this sounds strange," Mira said, breaking the silence. "But sometimes, when I walk through the city, I think people recognize me. They stop and stare. Once, a woman called me Lila by mistake. It wasn't just a slip. She really believed it was her." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the wet ground. "Lila had a secret," he said quietly, "something she never talked about. Now I wonder if that secret was you." Mira's breath caught. "What are you saying?" He looked at her then, really looked, seeing not just Lila's face, but a younger version of her spirit. "I don't know yet, but I need to find out." Mira's expression was unreadable, a flicker of hope and fear battling behind her eyes. "You think she could be my mother?" "I think—" Ethan paused, weighing his words. "I think she is." A long silence settled over them, the wind rustling through the trees like a whisper from the past. Mira looked away, blinking rapidly. "If that's true, why would she give—" They sat like that for a while, silent witnesses to a possibility neither of them could fully grasp. The grave behind them seemed to pulse with meaning, not just as a final resting place, but as a point of origin, a meeting place for bloodlines that had never properly met. The echoes of Lila were everywhere now, in the rain, in the breeze, in Mira's voice and posture and silent tears. And Ethan knew, with growing certainty, that his journey into the past had only just begun. The weight of the truth lingered in Ethan's mind as he drove home through the rain-slicked streets. Mira's words echoed, intertwining with memories he had buried deep, memories of Lila's silence, the secret sorrow she had carried alone. His penthouse felt colder than ever when he stepped inside. The luxury and grandeur now hollow shells against the storm raging within him. He moved mechanically, almost as if drawn by an invisible thread toward a solitary, forgotten corner of his apartment. In a dusty cabinet, tucked away beneath decades of success and carefully curated memorabilia, sat an old wooden box, a box he had never dared to open. It was Lila's, her last gift to him, or perhaps a silent confession. He pulled it out with trembling hands and sat at his grand mahogany desk, the room dimly lit by a single lamp that cast long shadows. The box was locked, but a small key hung from a delicate chain around his neck. Lila had given it to him once, saying it was, "For when I'm ready." He hadn't been ready until now. Ethan's breath hitched as he inserted the key, hearing the satisfying click of the lock releasing after years of silence. He lifted the lid slowly, and inside, carefully stacked, were letters, each sealed with an ornate wax emblem, marked with dates. Oddly, some of these dates were from after Lila's death. Curiosity, mingled with dread, urged him forward. He sifted through the envelopes until one caught his eye, a plain white envelope, unlike the others, with neat handwriting on the front that read, "For the day you meet her." His hands shook as he peeled open the seal. Inside was a letter, folded and yellowed slightly with age. The script was unmistakably Lila's, her beautiful, precise handwriting that Ethan had memorized long ago. He began to read, the words flowing like a secret river long hidden beneath the surface of his life. If you're reading this, then you found her, or she's found you. I hope you'll forgive me for keeping this from you, but some things were too painful to share while I was alive. I want you to know the truth. About me. About her. Ethan's eyes blurred with tears. He swallowed hard and continued reading. Before I ever met you, I gave birth to a daughter. She was a miracle, a gift I never expected. But life wasn't kind. My family, my world, were against her. They forced me to— His heart pounded as the pieces clicked into place. Mira, the girl at the cemetery, the face, the name, the inexplicable pull. This letter was a bridge from the past to the present, from pain to hope. Lila's words continued, soaked with regret and love. I tried to find her afterward. I searched every corner of this city, every foster home, every orphanage. But she vanished into the system, lost among thousands of others. I was too late, too broken to save her. But I never stopped hoping that one day, if fate allowed, you would meet her. Ethan's fingers tightened around the paper. The room seemed to spin. This was more than a confession. It was a plea, a beacon shining through years of darkness. Please, if you find her, love her as I never could. Tell her I am sorry. Tell her she was always in my heart, and tell her I am proud to have been her mother. He closed the letter, tears streaming down his cheeks. His breath was shallow and uneven, as though the world was shifting beneath him. This secret, hidden in plain sight, had waited patiently for him to uncover it. It was both a curse and a gift, an answer to questions he hadn't dared to ask. Ethan stood and paced the room, the letter clutched tightly. He thought of Mira, sitting alone in the rain, carrying the same burden of loss and longing. He had to find her. He had to bridge the gap between two lives torn apart by fear and silence. But there was more. In the box, beneath the letters, he found a small photo album, edges worn and pages filled with pictures of a young woman, Lila, younger than he had ever seen her, holding a baby girl with wide, curious eyes. The resemblance was unmistakable. He traced his finger over the faces, imagining the life that might have been, the love that could have grown. Each photo was a testament to a story left unfinished. A final envelope lay at the bottom of the box, thicker and heavier than the rest. No label, no date. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a key and a note in Lila's handwriting. To open the past, to unlock the future. Ethan knew instinctively this key belonged to something important, something hidden, perhaps the next step in uncovering Mira's past, or a secret Lila had kept locked away. The gravity of it pressed on him, urging him onward. He folded the letter carefully and placed it inside his jacket pocket. His mind was already racing ahead, planning, searching, hoping. The discovery of this letter was more than a revelation. It was a turning point. The grief that had shackled him for years was now mixed with a fierce determination. He would find Mira. He would give her the family she never knew she had. And maybe, in doing so, the results arrived on a quiet morning, unassuming in their plain envelope, but monumental in what they contained. Ethan sat at his kitchen table, hands trembling, as he unfolded the paper with the DNA test results. His heart had already accepted the truth long before science could confirm it. Mira was Lila's daughter. The genetic proof was a silent whisper that finally became a roar in his mind, overwhelming and profound. He wasn't Mira's biological father. That was clear. But something deeper tied them together, a shared grief, a connection forged by love and loss. For years, Ethan had carried Lila's memory in his chest like a sacred flame. Now, he held Mira's future in his hands, a chance to rebuild what had been broken for so long. When Ethan called Mira, his voice was gentle, trembling with emotion. She answered on the first ring, and he could hear the hesitation, the hope, the fear on the other end of the line. Meeting her in person again felt like a reunion of two souls, both shattered and searching. Their first meeting after the test was quiet, held in a small cafe bathed in soft afternoon light. Mira's eyes searched Ethan's face, looking for the truth behind the words he spoke. Ethan smiled softly, the kind of smile that held 1,000 stories and a lifetime of heartache. "I have something important to tell you," he began, voice steady but warm. "The test, it confirms what we both suspected. You are Lila's daughter." Mira's breath hitched. Tears welled up instantly, spilling down her cheeks as the weight of years of unanswered questions crashed over her. "She was my mother?" she whispered, voice cracking with disbelief. Ethan nodded, reaching across the table to take her hands in his. "Yes, she was a remarkable woman, strong, kind, full of light." For a long moment, they just sat there, letting the reality settle. Mira cried for the mother she never got to hold, for the moments lost forever. Ethan's own tears fell silently, mourning the love he'd lost and the family that had almost slipped through his fingers. In the weeks that followed, their bond deepened in ways neither expected. Ethan became a storyteller, painting pictures of Lila's laughter and warmth with every word he shared. He told Mira about how Lila had a passion for books, often getting lost for hours in their pages, and how she danced barefoot in the rain, fearless and free. Mira listened, eyes wide with wonder and sorrow. Each story was a thread weaving her mother into the fabric of her own life, filling the spaces where absence had once lived. She asked questions, small ones, big ones, painful ones, and Ethan answered them all with honesty and tenderness. There were moments Ethan watched Mira transform before his eyes, the fragile girl who had stood at a grave, now blossoming with the love and history she'd long been denied. And in turn, Mira brought new meaning to his life, a sense of purpose beyond wealth or success. Together, they began to rebuild a family from the fragments left behind. They visited the places Lila had loved, the bookstore she frequented, the park where she once sat reading beneath the old oak tree, the cafe where she had shared dreams and secrets with Ethan years ago. Each place was a pilgrimage, a journey of remembrance and hope. Mira found pieces of herself in every corner, in every whispered memory Ethan shared. And Ethan found a second chance to love and protect, to heal wounds he thought would never close. There were tears, many of them. Tears for the mother lost too soon, for the years stolen by silence and fear. But there were also smiles, soft and tentative, growing stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, as they sat watching the rain streak down the windows of Ethan's penthouse, Mira turned to him with a quiet question. "Do you think she knew I'd find you someday?" Ethan smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest. "I think she hoped you would. I think she left that letter so you wouldn't be alone forever." Mira leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time, Ethan felt a peace he hadn't known in years. They were two lost souls, now found, bound by love, healing, and the promise of a new beginning. In that moment, the silence of grief was finally broken, replaced by a shared story of love that transcended time and loss. Months drifted by like quiet waves, gentle but persistent. Ethan and Mira settled into a rhythm neither of them could have predicted, a rhythm born not of obligation, but of something far more profound. Chosen family. Their lives intertwined with a fragile tenderness, built on shared memories and the silent understanding of loss and hope. The walls of Ethan's penthouse, once echoing with loneliness, now hummed softly with Mira's laughter. They spent evenings together, talking about everything and nothing, books they loved, music that stirred their souls, and dreams that had once seemed unreachable. The past no longer held them captive. It was a foundation on which they began to build something new. On a cool autumn afternoon, the day of Lila's birthday arrived. The sky was a soft canvas of pale blues and greys, as if nature itself was honoring her memory. Ethan and Mira prepared to visit the grave, not with heaviness, but with a quiet celebration of the woman who had unknowingly brought them together. Mira chose a bouquet of white lilies, their delicate petals. As they approached Lila's grave, the familiar headstone stood strong and proud among the rows of other markers, bathed in the soft golden light of late afternoon. Ethan noticed Mira's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but her smile was gentle and sincere. "I think she brought us together," Mira whispered, her voice barely louder than the rustling of the leaves around them. Ethan nodded, his heart full. "She gave me one last gift," he said softly, "and it was you." They placed the lilies carefully by the headstone, their fingers brushing briefly as they stood side by side. The wind stirred, carrying with it the sweet scent of the flowers and the distant murmur of the city beyond the cemetery walls. For the first time since Lila's passing, the space around her grave didn't feel heavy or empty. It felt like a beginning, an opening of a new chapter that honored the past but embraced the future. Mira reached out and took Ethan's hand. "I never thought I'd have this," she said, eyes bright with emotion. "A family, a connection." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "Neither did I, but here we are." They stood together for a long while, letting the silence speak volumes. The sun dipped lower, casting warm hues across the landscape, and the soft rustle of leaves whispered a promise of hope and renewal. As they turned to leave, Mira paused, looking back one last time at the grave. "I want to live a life she'd be proud of," she said quietly. "You already are," Ethan replied, his voice steady and full of conviction. Outside the cemetery gates, the world awaited with its endless possibilities. Ethan and Mira walked forward, not as a millionaire and a stranger, but as a family forged by love, loss, and the unbreakable bonds of the heart. Lila's legacy lived on in them, in their laughter, their memories, and the new beginnings they now embraced. The past, once a ghost haunting their lives, had become a guiding light, leading them toward a future bright with hope and love. And so, beneath the vast sky and amidst the quiet rustling of leaves, Ethan and Mira stepped into that future together.